if you want to write a first principles book, you cannot use the word, like you cannot use the two letters AI because it's just nonsense. Like it does not mean anything to anyone in any valuable way. And the other problem is the commercial interest driving it, right? As I joke, a lot of reputed people have raised billions of dollars, supposedly to solve general artificial intelligence, and have ended up selling us advertising instead. And that's just how it is, right? I'm not judging anyone, but it has to be said. It's a lot of bait and switch going on. And so I don't want to be the bait and switch guy. And so I very actively stay away from that.
Welcome to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand with Nicholas Kuhner. We can all see that Ritavan has worked in data science because his hair is going the same way as mine, so we are kindred spirits. Ritavan is an entrepreneurial technology leader with a decade of experience focused on data-driven business impact. He's authored peer-reviewed papers, given invited talks at global conferences, and holds an international patent. Known for his first principles approach to building and scaling data-driven solutions across industries, Ritavan combines deep technical expertise with strategic vision and an execution-focused mindset. His latest book offers actionable insights to accelerate data-driven value creation for legacy businesses. And what better time for a book on this subject to come out, because so many companies are being hit left, right, and center. AI this, AI that. Do we need to change? What do we need to do to remain relevant? And I think this book is going to do just the business. So Ritavan, welcome.
Thanks, Nicholas. I'm really excited with that intro and with the way you framed the conversation.
Now, we had a little conversation earlier, and this is hilarious. So I'm an African, so I'm from South Africa, and I speak Norwegian and a bit of German and a variety of and Mandarin and so on. But Ritavan speaks more languages than me. I think let's go through them. There's French, Dutch.
A little bit of that I'm learning, but yeah, English, French, German.
Yeah.
I learned a bit of Italian, a smattering of Dutch. And among the Indian languages, I speak some Hindi, and I can understand some Bengali, Gujarati, and Tamil.
But we're going to do this in English just to make it very easy for our American audience. Hopefully they can understand both of our accents. So let's just talk about, I want to go through a little bit of your background before we go into data impact, how legacy businesses, you may as well show your book because this is quite a cool cover as well. Data impact, how legacy businesses save, leverage, align, simplify, optimize, and grow to win. And I think you've got a catchy, a snazzy little catchphrase for that as well. SLASOG. Okay. So before we get into the book, what gives you the right to tell people who have got legacy businesses that you can help them deal with this new data-driven age?
So to be completely honest, I think no one has the right to tell an entrepreneur anything. With that caveat out of the way, I think what I can definitely do is kind of share my battle scars, share my learning, and share my framework, which kind of tries to take a whole bunch of useful stuff gleaned as an operator over a decade, as with a kind of advanced mathematical background in the foundations of machine learning, etc. So kind of, taking all of that, fusing that into a useful, actionable, I think that is my value proposition. And that does not give me the right to tell anyone what they should do. But I think that at least allows me to offer as much free value as I can to people.
And you're not just telling, you haven't just written this book because you think, oh, this is a good sales topic and I can sell some books. You've actually practiced what you preached in terms of you've worked in companies and headed up the data science department or the machine, divisions where there's machine learning involved. How has your experience been with working with companies that are legacy businesses and have made the right move? What is the difference between companies that do it the right way and perhaps companies who do it the wrong way?
That's a really good question. And I think that's why I also wrote the book, because when I reflected on like a decade of operating, I think what stands out is there are a lot of wrong ways to do it. And so actually the first chapter, which is titled Save, the first letter in SLASOG, the first S is for save. And save is all about save money by basically not doing stupid things. Another question is, of course, what are those things? And these are basically things that just empirically don't work. There are enough studies, by Harvard Business Review, by all the big consultancies, ironically, because they survey globally companies and sort of try to figure out how quote unquote digital transformation is, etc. And I think it was IMD Business School in Switzerland. They did a meta study, tried to put all of this together, and the aggregate failure rate they came up with in one of their papers was 87.5%. So we can round that off broadly, around 90%. And now, if you're a business owner, an executive, an investor, and I gave you a coin that you could toss, and 90% of the time it's going to come up tails, would you even invest, in playing this game, right? And I think that's kind of what motivated me to write this. Is the deck is so horribly loaded against legacy businesses. And why legacy? Because they're non-software native. Right? So if you're a software native business, then there are enough playbooks out there. There's really good content on SaaS, etc. I cannot bring an exceptional amount of value to that conversation necessarily. But for legacy businesses, I felt like what is often considered best practices is basically just groupthink, right? It's just a whole lot of bullshit. And I've seen it wreck. I've seen shipwrecks because of this. And so this is really that's what I meant. These are scars. These are battle scars from operating a decade. And I said, finally, after a decade, after having started as an intern, and my last position having been a CTO at a real estate technology company, I felt like, okay, now's the moment where I can seriously take a step back, reflect, craft a book that takes a first principles approach to data impact. And I have enough knowledge, experience, and exposure to really make a compelling case for business owners of what does not work.
Talking about what doesn't work, one of the selling points of this book is for you if you want to prevent failures and wastes on AI hype. How big is this challenge of AI hype? Because I've seen it perhaps in technology businesses or a lot of businesses trying to implement some of this new technology. And the problem is that every week there's something new and shinier and better. How, do you talk about that a little bit in the book in terms of how to select the type of data structure or data solution that is going to drive their AI journey?
No, you're totally right. And I think this in my career so far, in just the last decade, the accepted consensus definition of AI has changed almost half a dozen times. Right? Pre-2013, it was all about sophisticated rule-based system with some fuzzy logic, some kind of regressions and all of that. Around 2014, thanks to improvements in computation and also a large enough data set, you have the first deep learning paper with ImageNet achieving very high scores on standardized tasks. And so everything was like, oh, we need to do deep learning and all. That is the only deep learning is AI. And in 2015, when I was in my master's specialization in machine learning, Google DeepMind released AlphaGo. So for the first time, an algorithm beat top Go players in the world. And that suddenly then reframed the entire conversation around reinforcement learning. So now deep learning was already passé. If you're an AI, quote unquote AI guy, you need to be a reinforcement learning. Then we're smaller hype trends in between. And now over the last, 3 years, 4 years, it's just LLMs, which is basically, it's glorified transformer models with a lot of compute and a lot of data. And of course, with some incremental improvements, but fundamentally the power that transformer models brought. And, I still remember we submitted a paper once to a conference where we used transformer models for translating between two languages and summarizing simultaneously end to end. And our paper wasn't accepted because apparently it wasn't trendy at that point. And I stopped submitting papers to conferences because I said, this is nonsense. If I had submitted, now you can submit anything remotely to do with language models and that paper is going to get accepted. So yes, we have insane hype cycle. And they're also very much fueled by commercial interests. I think that's something that should be very openly said. In the intro to my book, I say I'm not going to use the word AI anywhere because if you can't even agree on a consensus definition that is even remotely rigorous and that will hold true for at least 3 years, then why are we even using that word, right? And two Princeton researchers wrote a book called AI Snake Oil, about half a year ago. And that's what they said, they said, like, if I wrote a book on transportation, what kind of transportation? Are we talking of buses? Are we talking of cars? And so AI is like this kind of umbrella term for, anything that gets people excited. And some people think AI is what machines, cannot do. Some people think AI is what machines have just started doing. So it's like, pick your thing, right? Like there is no, it's just not rigorous. And so, just from a, like if you want to write a first principles book, you cannot use the word, like you cannot use the 2 letters AI because it's just nonsense. Like it does not mean anything to anyone in any, in any valuable way. And the other problem is the commercial interest driving it, right? As I joke, a lot of reputed people have raised billions of dollars, supposedly to solve general artificial intelligence, and have ended up selling us advertising instead. That's just how it is, right? I'm not judging anyone, but it has to be said. It's a lot of, bait and switch going on. And so I don't want to be the bait and switch guy. And so I, very actively stay away from that.
Yeah, I get your point about AI being an umbrella term. Just before ChatGPT came out, AI wasn't being spoken about anywhere. It was all machine learning. That was the main focus in the industries that we were working on. And I remember everyone from Cisco to IBM to all of these companies, every single software company you can think of. So this is not the typical legacy businesses, but all of them were building their own AI or their own machine learning and LLM models internally. And then out came ChatGPT and AI, the term just skyrocketed. So I'm sure if you did an analysis on the term AI, the search term AI, it would have gone from 2022 just, skyrocketed. So yeah, I think those points are quite relevant. Now, if we have a look at a couple of the other questions that you've set out for me, which are really nice. And one of them is, don't just be a consumer of AI, but become a producer of AI. Maybe let's unpack that a little bit in terms of, because right now, majority of companies are just utilizing AI for some reason. What do you mean? How can legacy businesses become a producer of AI?
Of data impact. I wouldn't call it AI.
Okay, let's take away AI, data impact.
Okay. Yeah, so first the consumer side. I mean, like what happens very often is, the whole market is vendor consultant driven where, legacy businesses are being pitched kind of, a fix it all kind of solution. And what happens there is that if you think about the value you bring to your customers as a legacy business, if any kind of tooling, right, makes something significantly more efficient, and you take a step back and look at this as a market, then there are 2 groups of people that are going to, get disproportionate. One is consumers, because, things have gotten more efficient, so the barrier to entry goes down. So potentially you have more price competition and they get a better deal. And the other guys who's going to wave money is the guys selling the tooling. The one who's going to get screwed is the legacy business, right? And there's a very interesting anecdote that Charlie Munger recounted somewhere, where he was sitting with Warren Buffett in their office. One of the guys in the team runs in and said, "Hey, this is really nice textile, mill machines that have come out. It's super efficient. We should totally go in and we should invest in this and buy." And Warren Buffett said, "Okay, let's check if they're actually as efficient as you claim, because if they are, I'm going to exit the textile business." And that comes from this fundamental understanding of value creation. If the machines are efficient, then you want to run for the door, because the 2 guys who are going to make money is the manufacturer of the machines, and the customer is going to have potentially a better time. But you don't want to be in that business. And that's my whole pitch, which is, if someone's coming to you with tooling, first try to understand what value creation are you delivering to your customers. But if you don't understand that, right, then any kind of tooling is not really going to bring anyone any value. And I kind of distinguish between 3 value creation paradigms, right? And if we just go back a little more in history, there are of course more, right? So if we start with hunter-gatherers, I actually went and looked up a whole bunch of papers on how value creation worked in hunting, just out of curiosity. And if I tell you hunting, what do you picture? Like just quickly, like what do you see in front of your eyes?
Well, I see guys with spears chasing after a mastodon.
That's exactly what I thought, right? So I was like, okay, how did hunter-gatherer tribes really, get their calories? And I was like, okay, must be, groups of men with spears, killing large mammals. And when you actually look, so of course, we don't have data from the Stone Age, but what we do have is remote tribes across different continents that still live, that kind of Stone Age-like lifestyle, right? That still live off hunting. And so you have anthropologists who've gone there and studied these guys and collected data and analyzed it and kind of, presented. And there are meta studies on that and all of that. So, but to, long story short, without getting into too much detail, but if you're just to kind of generalize what's going on, there is a clear pattern, which is that 40 to 60% of the meat that gets eaten actually comes from traps. Traps is automation. That's the first form of automation at scale, because you build a trap once, you can let as many animals fall into it. And they're usually smaller mammals, right? So the chunks of meat are smaller, the amount of calories per unit is smaller, but it's scalable and it's automated. So let's say that's about 60%. What's left then is about 20, 30, 40% sometimes, depending on the region and the season, etc. These things, of course, vary a lot by region and by season, but broadly, let's say in the 20, 30% range is what we typically picture. So like guys with spears killing big mammals. And very interestingly, 10 to 20%, and this is very specific to regions that already have a primary predator. So if you have a lion, if you have a tiger, or even wild dogs, packs of wild dogs. So what happens there? The smart thing is you follow them when they go hunting, and then you chase the primary predator away. So 10 to 20% of your meat could actually just come in the lazy way, which is like passive income almost. So you let the lion do the hunting and then you chase the lion away. And that's much easier because, 20 people spears around the lion's not going to think twice. So what I'm trying to get at is automation was there in the age of hunting. And if you go to the agricultural age, it's similar. And it's something that Daniel Priestley, an entrepreneur, points out, which is that, land is essentially a form of automation, right? Because, you put the seed in, like as a human, there's not much else, like the rest is nature, right? So, the unit of land is what allowed you, it was the unit of scaling for value, right? So the more land you had, the more value. And that's why, the nobility and the French Revolution and all that stuff. Then you go to the industrial age, right? Now we're in the age of Adam Smith. So value creation now has two distinct characteristics that matter. When you're trying to figure out how you're delivering value to your customer. And one is that your replication costs are relatively constant. This is an industrial age product, right? Physical product. Every book costs about the same to manufacture, and personalization costs the same. Meaning, if I decided to, handcraft a page or a chapter for every person I gifted this book to, I would have relatively constant costs. If I move now into the digital paradigm, right? So now we're talking Kindle, or whatever e-reader you like. Now what happens is the replication costs are essentially zero, right? Because I'm not printing anything physically. I just have to create that file once, and then now anyone can access it via their device. But personalization costs remain, meaning if I now to write a dedication or a little personalized case study or chapter for every reader, it would still cost me the same amount. And if you move into the data-driven digital paradigm, and now if you gave me, you uploaded your CV and you uploaded a whole bunch of context about you, right? And then let's say I would feed it, since we are in the age of LLMs, right? So what if I fed it into an LLM and said, hey, this is Nicholas, he's bought my book. 90% of the book is the same for everyone, but hey, can you write a special chapter, a case study based on his background that would bring him the most value, given his context as being Nicholas with his background, and given this book and the ideas and, what this book is about, like take these two context vectors and generate a chapter. And it doesn't matter how good it is, but what I'm trying to get at is the cost of doing that is almost zero, right? And so understanding fundamentally how value creation works is so important, because if you're operating across multiple paradigms like legacy businesses do, right? So legacy businesses, why are they legacy? Because they're non-software native. They were born in the industrial age. And so once you understand this as a business owner, as an executive, as an investor, now you can be an operator that thinks like an investor. So like whenever you invest in a data-driven initiative, solution, whatever you want to call it, product, whatever, right? Now suddenly you understand the dynamics of how value gets created and compounded.
Well, what I really love about what you're talking about here is the taking of data from many, many generations back and showing how things really haven't changed that much. And if you understand fundamentals, so first principles, exactly as you mentioned, the future isn't as daunting or business isn't as complicated as it could be. So these aren't seeing into the future, but it's having a look at cycles, and cycles obviously are called cycles because they repeat themselves. And I love that example about rather chasing the lions away, because that's exactly a problem a whole bunch of businesses probably have when they go first into a new industry. They go in, get killed, and then they do all the hard work, and then the little guys like the jackals and the vultures and the humans come in and steal their lunch. And that's happened over and over and over again in history. And I suppose a lot of legacy businesses want to try and avoid running headfirst to be the first in the industry, the first in this, the first in whatever space it is. But it also gives opportunities for nimble, more intelligent companies to go in and use the hard labor that the original folks have done. So this book is going to be coming out at the end of April, and I think you've got a special offer for our listeners as well, Ritavan.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it's a very special offer. It's a limited time offer. So with my publisher, agreed to have it available for less than $1, so 99 cents or less than €1, depending on what region you're in. And so if you go to ritavan.com today and just there's a little assessment I've also created so that it's just like with a doctor, right? Why should you? I'm not going to prescribe a whole bunch of ideas in my book to you without really you being sure what brings you value. So there's a little assessment. You can fill that out. You get a feel for how much value the book will bring you. So if you score low, that means there's a lot of potential that the book could bring you. And then, grab it for 99 cents. I can't set it for $0, but if you go on Kindle, 95 cents is a good deal. Try before you buy. If you like it on Kindle and you like to hold a paperback like I do, then feel free to order it. But then at least you have the opportunity to validate that it's bringing value to you. I don't want to sell anything.
And that's ritavan.com. So RITAVAN.com. Now, before we end off, I just want to remind folks again why this book is important for specifically legacy businesses wanting to create data-driven value. Your framework, Save, Leverage, Align, Simplify, Optimize, and Grow, SLASOG, is designed to help business leaders address behavioral biases and enhance decision-making quality, ultimately maximizing data-driven business impact. So these are the companies that are the real underdogs today, and your framework is going to help them in a world that is stacked against them. So I really hope that folks who are in legacy business, and this could be anything, delivery businesses that aren't necessarily very tech-heavy, and just one last thing I want to talk about, which is a value that a lot of these businesses forget about, is that with everything being digitized, everything that can be digitized easily has already been digitized. And we have that data very easily on spreadsheets. But a lot of these legacy businesses, like you went and had a look at how did hunter-gatherers and particularly hunters operate, a lot of these businesses have data that isn't being captured and that hasn't been utilized yet in the business, and that can be valuable for them as an asset and can be valuable for selling to other businesses who need that kind of information. So there's so much that you can do within this space. So even if you're a legacy business, you are not a dodo, you are not extinct yet, and with this book I think it will really take you in the right step. So Ritavan, thank you so much for your time, and next time we'll have to do it in Dutch or in German.
Right, Nicholas, it was a pleasure. Glad.
I really do appreciate your comments. So why not go and watch this live on YouTube, or go to my website, kuhne.no. That's KUHNE.no for more information.